Right, because you got your records, your recording studio.
Yeah, the studio. Yeah.
Okay, right on, man. Well, if we can get in the frame right there, man. Thank you for everybody joining us right now to the chicanXperience. I'm DX. I'm your host. I'm here with the man of the hour. If you don't know who he is, then you've probably been sleeping under a rock for 2 years, past 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. You've been doing it longer than that, bro. So, I can't tell you how much I'm honored to just have you here with me. We're here at Mission Tobacco Lounge. They're just doing a DJ set, right?
Yes, sir.
And yeah, man. I'll let just Joey. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you, man. So, man, you guys are, you being a frontman with the Sinseers, and even in your solo acts and everything, you're killing it right now. Mm-hmm. Does it feel like you guys are on the verge of something even bigger than what you're doing right now, like taking the whole genre, the whole movement to like new heights?
I definitely think the scene as a whole is kind of making steps to kind of getting to like more a little, I wouldn't say the mainstream, but a little more accessible to the, I guess you could say the mainstream audience of people, radio and television and stuff like that. So I think a lot more people are adapting to it now. And I think it's cool that, a lot of the local bands that have kind of been, I think it's within my area at least, have been kind of putting that down, laying down the groundwork to have live performance and live concerts, be a big part of it. So we're kind of just part of that, we've been playing clubs for years and venues. And, it's just cool to see that the crowds, the change throughout the years and see the scene build as a whole.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Because the way I see it is like, even though the scene isn't new, really. I mean, you guys have been doing it for so long. The market is new. The market is growing. Sorry, I'm over here forgetting my mic. The market is growing and everything. And so, and I feel like it's yet to adapt to it fully, because you're doing songs now with pop artists, you're doing songs now with rap artists, and so it's gonna have that time where it has that blend with other musics, right? And so yeah, man, it's just I'm waiting for it, until that moment happens. You know,
big
what I mean?
payoff.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of had a little taste of it within the festival that the Let's Groove Fest that came out that we did, which was the first concert that we all did within the year after COVID started. And I believe Bobby D put that together. It was at the Corona, the Fairgrounds, and that was just a big eye opener to see how much throughout just waiting on it and watching people hear about it and see about it on the internet and through social media, and then wait for people to come out and do the show. When it's time for the show to happen, everybody came out and everybody came out dressed in their cars, and it was just a really cool experience to see. People were waiting for it, and they were hungry for it, and they came out and they represented it for sure.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's cool. So, as far as your production, I've heard that you do you record in analog and everything like that. Is that something that you learned from Bosco, man, or is that something that you've been doing for a long time now?
I think. Well, I wouldn't say longer. I mean, he's been definitely doing it a long time. Our paths didn't cross until recently, maybe about a year and a half ago, maybe. And it was kind of something I'd always been interested in, because I've always been into old classic rocksteady reggae music from the 60s and 70s. So, for me, it was kind of just trying to nail that sound and try to really perfect that, that technique, which when you look back at it, they were just trying to copy Motown and Stax and trying to get, their tricks. So, when I moved to Riverside and opened up my studio, Secondhand Sounds here, the only guy who knew anything about, vintage equipment was the man himself, Mr. Gabe Roth. You hear his resume of the records he's done, and just all the stuff with Sharon Jones and Dap Kings and everything like that. It was a good thing to see it was a good learning process, and it was good to see it firsthand from him. And he was such a great guy to kind of teach me little tricks and little techniques here and there. And anytime I need to borrow a mic, he's always kind of willing and able to do it. Whether he's not there, he'll be cross country in New York, and he'll have somebody open up the door for me to get a mic. So
that's hard.
I appreciate that he extends that hand to the scene, to the younger generation, and he's a big influence on us on production and songwriting.
Yeah, definitely, man. And you were speaking of the other genres that you've done, and everybody knows that you're a very musical guy. You know different instruments. You're a singer as well. You know what I mean? And you've done all types of different genres. Given that you're kind of reaching a lot of attention because of Souldies and modern soul, do you sometimes feel confined to that genre in terms of your expression, or or because it's a lot about romance, but ska can be about different things, and all the other musics you do can be about different things. Do you ever feel confined at all?
I mean, not really, because I always catch myself, every time I sit down and write a song, it starts off as like a reggae ska song, and then it's like, oh man, I should probably turn this into, because the lyric content or whatever the situation may be. I always try to flip it and find different ways to see what would work best, but I don't really feel a constriction because, for one, the label that I'm a part of, Coal Mine Records, gives me 100% freedom to do, what I feel is like, what I want to represent. And they know that, all the stuff that I've been doing in the past with my previous bands it speaks for itself. So I'm glad to have the support that they give me and they're all the way in Ohio, and they're putting their trust, putting their trust in some Chicano kid from LA,
right.
to make like some records, some dope records, and so the last release was a kind of a test to see if the audience would kind of take to it or kind of pigeonhole me. And it was a good breath of fresh air because people really took to it, and they were welcoming to the new genre, which really was my genre that I had started off with. So
right.
So it was kind of a cool little transition, and it wasn't too much of a shock to people. And, they know that I'll always be going back to singing, what's his name and stuff like that at the end of the show. So they come for the songs they want to hear, but they always leave with the records that they want to, listen to, which are the new records. So that's cool.
Word, man. And so, with your, you brought up, what you've been working on lately a little bit. But it's been kind of a little while since we've heard from the Sinseers, and I believe we got a single from you, though, right?
Yes.
Are you guys working on anything new with the Sinseers? Is it always going to be 45s, or is it all, singles, or is it going to be a full-length album you guys are working on?
Well, we do have a full-length album that we've kind of been sitting on.
Wow.
We had a release date for like March. I think it was like March 25th or something, 2019. So
okay, word.
So that really kind of shut everything down because we had a big plan to go on the tour and market the record and really promote it and to do the best that we could with it. But it just didn't make sense to release the whole package and go out on the road because you couldn't. It was locked down.
Yeah.
So that kind of held us back a little bit as far as putting out that LP. But we're just kind of waiting for the time to be right to get back into playing some more shows, get people comfortable coming out again.
Yeah.
Because one thing we don't want to do is force people to buy a record that we want to make sure that they're anticipating it properly and they want to be a part of it because we don't want to just put out music. We want it to be kind of like like an old event where so and so's put on a record and you see the commercials and you buy the promo and you see the posters around. So we're looking forward to
all your homies are listening to it.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to doing it proper and doing it right.
Yeah, that's cool, man. And so, you're talking about, how making sure everybody's comfortable and stuff like that. But you and I were just talking about, your own comfort level and stuff like that. How do you feel, yourself, putting yourself out there, going on the road, being in front of, crowds like this or whatever? How do you feel personally?
It's a little tough, man. It's scary because, we've always been, the Sinseers, the Altons and I, we've always kind of been welcoming to be we were always the guys that you see at the end of the show in the parking lot till 3 a.m.
Right.
Hanging out with people at the shows and stuff like that. And it's hard not to do
Abiding
that anymore.
the law.
Yeah, loitering around. And it's kind of hard not to do that now because we have to remain, separated to an extent and be safe and, follow the guidelines of these clubs and, protect everybody first and foremost. So it's tough that we're not being able to be as connected to the audience, physically and in real time, in front of them. But we do appreciate everybody coming out, and it's the audience that the fans and audience that have been coming to the shows have just been so amazing, and so understanding, and so freaking awesome that it's the only reason why because there's a lot of really bad promoters and concert venues, but the fans that come out to the shows make it so much worth dealing with all that stuff.
Yeah, man. That's cool. You got to have a certain love for it, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so, one thing that kind of strikes me about this modern soul movement and everything like that is that, there's a kind of a new approach to it and everything. But I still feel in terms of like lyrics, when I hear songs like Seems Like, or when I hear songs like What's His Name and stuff like that, I feel like the content is very much still the same, keeps that energy and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like there's is there a need in your mind kind of to kind of adapt it to these times? Do you try to do that when you're writing? Do you try to think about what are modern love situations when you're writing about that?
I mean, for the concept, particularly with love, I don't think you could ever really say anything new. So it's more about just saying what connects, what you feel. because, you know, the difference between a good love song and a bad love song is people really believe whether you felt that love or lost that love. And, you know, if you're able to put yourself into that and connect to that for somebody else to connect to it, then, you know, you've succeeded. And I think that's the key. It's not really finding a new way to do it, but maybe just finding your own way to do it.
Right.
And that's what's worked for the Sinseers, and it's you know, it's always been a good topic to kind of write to back, not to fall back in a lazy sense, but like just like it's always a good start because it's a concept that everybody can relate to and understand.
Yeah, man. Thank you. And how do you feel fatherhood and being, you know, in a dedicated relationship has changed your look on it from, you know, the times that you were writing it probably when you were single and didn't have kids till now?
I mean, I think a lot of people respect the fact that, you know, I'm trying my best at least, you know, to be a good dad and be as present as possible. And, you know, like anybody, we've had a past and, you know, and we hope for a good future. So, you know, I think the best thing for me is being able to have people to you know, to work for, you know, work towards. And, you know, the studio that I'm building and the production company label that I'm working for, it's important to me to make it as big as possible and make it as successful as possible, not only for me but for my kids, because that's the biggest thing in my life right now, and that's the reason why, you know, I get up and I pick up a guitar every day to see what comes out, or, you know, and sometimes it doesn't come out, you know, and that's okay, because I know that I could, you know, it's always going to be there because I'm always inspired by fans, by my family, by my friends, my peers, and the bands around me. So.
That's cool, man. That's cool. Yeah, man. Just being a father myself, like I understand. And so, you know, you've had in my research and everything, you know, we talked about it too, is that, you know, you live kind of halfway between, for a while in your life, halfway between LA and halfway between San Bernardino, right? And, you know, I mean, just because I know a lot of LA cats, a lot of OC cats look down on the IE, but you're from it. And so what is, you know, this time, I feel like there's a lot of folks that are actually making moves out here. You know, can you speak to that influence? Can you speak to that presence that the Inland Empire has within these movements, even when folks might not notice it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, going back to like the scene that I was part of previously, and, you know, still am, you know, like old Rocksteady's Crossing, like a lot of my favorite bands from them, you know, came out from the Inland Empire, like the Debonaires and from Riverside. You know, Mono, the guy who invited me out tonight to spin, you know, he's the guitar player, original guitar player for the Debonaires, which was one of my favorite bands growing up. And, you know, you have Jesse Wagner from the Agrolites, you know, who's done stuff with a lot of great acts, and Tim Armstrong and Ransom and stuff. Jesse Wagner is from Rialto, so it's like, to me, it's like, maybe there might not be as loud of a movement, but the movement that has started here, whether it be like late 80s, the early 90s, continue on to now, has always been some of the musicians that I personally have always looked up to, because they've always been such a welcoming artists. They've always been so helpful and just great, just great people.
Yeah, shout out Mono, shout out Ryan, shout out my family Javi too. Yeah, man, good people.
Sir.
You know what I found funny about your background is you lived in LA, so you were living in East LA, right?
Yes, sir.
But you know, your pops out here in San Bernardino, he was doing the car club stuff.
Yeah.
So what was that like? Because you're going from one authentic place of experience to you're going to San Bernardino, and it may not be the Mecca, but you're over there. Your pops is the one doing the lowriders and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, my dad moved to San Bernardino to get out of East LA. You know, for all of us to get out of there.
Right on.
And when my parents split, you know, my mom stood back, and you know, we ended up staying in the house that, you know, my dad's car club used to loiter around and get their car clubs, because the guy who owned the house before was a mechanic, you know, neighborhood mechanic, and he would be the guy fixing up all the guys' cars, you know, before the shows. So it became like a meetup spot, you know. So it's always been exposed, and you know, when I would visit my dad, he'd have us for the weekends, and he worked all week, so what he wanted to do on the weekends was go to car shows, So he'd bring us along, and we'd be bored, but,
So where were y'all going? Were y'all going back to LA for the car?
Yeah, the car shows were in San Bernardino, Pomona.
Okay. Not too long of a drive.
Not too long of a drive, yeah. So we'd be out here in San Bernardino doing the car shows, and then go out to East LA and then see the culture is full on, and just not knowing a little bit about it, but not really being fully a part of it, because when you're that age, you're growing up, you're into stuff your parents are into. I was in the punk rock.
Right.
So punk rock is a big thing for me. So it was my way to rebel on that. But as time went on, more and more people that come to my shows know my dad, and they know my dad's car club, and my dad travels a lot. He still works for a lot of the clubs. And he'll meet people that tell him, like, hey, have you heard of this kid? He has the same last name as yours. And he's like, yeah, I've heard of him for the last 30 years, So,
wipe his ass.
Yeah, I used to watch him cry on the floor. But it's cool. It's a cool little full circle thing that I'm able to pay homage to my dad and, what he liked and what he represented.
Cool, man, cool. And then just lastly, man, I mean, I know you've been talking about, your production studio, your recording studio and everything. Just anything else you want to plug, and just make sure people look out for you.
Yeah, just check out Secondhand Sound, Dalton's, Sears, Tristalito, all the homies. Check us out, Penrose Records, Coal Mine Records. People look out for the full-length album we'll be putting out soon. And thanks for coming out to the shows. Thank you for all the support.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Thank you.
Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thank you, bro.
Yeah.